Come learn about heritability, nature versus nurture, and a problematic behavior in some Jem'Hadar soldiers in this month's BioTrekkie Explains, starting now. Hello, welcome back. My name is Mohammed Noor. I'm a biology professor at Duke University, and I'm an occasional science consultant for the Star Trek universe. I'm very excited to talk with you today about the concept of heritability. That's essentially how much of the variation you see in a trait among individuals comes from genetics as opposed to the environment. And we're going to do it in the context of Deep Space Nine. Woohoo! So without further ado, let's get started. The series Star Trek Deep Space Nine introduced a warrior species called the Jem'Hadar, who are born addicted to a drug called ketracel white. Now in this episode, Hippocratic Oath, we learn of a Jem'Hadar soldier who is curiously not addicted to this drug. So this soldier initially thought that something in the environment on his planet cured him. However, we later learned that he had a genetic mutation that made him not addicted. So this is a great opportunity to talk about genetic and environmental contributions to traits in the real world. Now, some outlets talk about a debate between nature and nurture, or between genetics and environment, in what causes most differences we see in natural populations. Now this debate is a myth, since the answer is nearly always some of both. Why not both? For nearly every complex trait. But one thing biologists like to do is measure the relative contributions of genetics versus environment on the variation in particular traits. So this leads to a concept called heritability. Heritability is an estimate of how much of the variation we see in the trait among individuals is genetic in a particular population. So if a trait is totally controlled by genetics, let's say blood type, then its heritability would be 100%. Something like eye color may have a high heritability, but not quite 100%. In contrast, traits that are purely environmental, like say spoken language, that would have near zero heritability. So scientists study heritability a few different ways, but one way that it's often used is seeing how well the trait in the parents predicts the trait in the offspring. For example, if two parents are both tall, does that mean the kids are likely to be tall? The answer is often yes for human height, because height has a heritability of around 80%, at least in the United States. It's not a guarantee that every kid of a pair of tall parents will be tall, but most of them will. Now, some traits like behavioral ones or health-related ones are harder to study this way because the parents provide not just the genetics, but often the environment that a child grows up in. So sometimes scientists also compare genetic offspring to adopted offspring, or identical twins versus fraternal twins, to help understand heritability. Now I should mention two misconceptions about heritability. First, heritability estimates are specific to particular populations and environments at one time. For example, heritability of human height may be high in the United States and Australia today, but may be a lot lower in other populations where food is severely limited or where different genetic variants might be present. Also, saying that a trait is, for example, 80% heritable doesn't say anything about a particular person or particular family. You may know a person or family who is short for purely environmental reasons or purely genetic reasons. Heritability is instead the average contribution of genetics to the trait for the whole population in that environment, and it's often estimated from how strongly offspring resemble parents across families. So back to this Trek episode. The Jem'Hadar soldier assumed that the variation in ketracel white addiction had low heritability and thus was attributable to his environment. Sadly for them, as far as we know, addiction to ketracel white has a heritability of 100%. You have the mutation affecting it or you don't. Anyway, recapping some of the main science points here, heritability is the fraction of populational variation in a trait that is genetic. Heritability can vary across populations due to differences in environments or genetic variants that are present. And heritability is a property of the population, not an estimate of contributions in a specific individual. More neat science inspired by Star Trek. Yay! Had you heard of heritability before? And did you buy into this myth of an ongoing debate between nature versus nurture? And what did you think of this cool Deep Space Nine episode? Let us know in the comments, and thank you as always for tuning into BioTrekkie Explains. See you next time!